Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're here to talk about the New York Islanders season that was in 22-23 season and the season that is coming up in the 2023-24 season. To get us started, we'll start with the recap, obviously. Um, it was much of a muchness for the New York Islanders, to be honest with you. The defensive structure was still there for them. It's obviously what their team has been built around for several years now, and that still existed. That was still quite strong and evident. However, their goal scoring woes sort of still existed quite heavily. Apart from Brock Nilsson, who again put up high 30 goals for the second season in a row, and he seemed to be one of the few who could find the net regularly for this New York Islanders team, and it really sort of it showed and it hurt them a bit. However, it didn't stop them from making the playoffs. They finished 15th overall for the season, 42 wins and 93 points, beating out the Pittsburgh Penguins and finishing just a point ahead of Florida for that first wild card spot. So ultimately, they still make the playoffs, which is what you sort of aim to do in the end. But really, not much came of it. They had a reasonable series against Carolina, but ultimately their run come to an end. Just again, it was that goal scoring thing. They had one game in that series where they were able to put some goals on the board, but they did it really quickly. They did it all in a space of about 5 minutes, I believe. So it's a real struggle for the New York Islanders this season was that goal scoring prowess. They brought on Bo Horvat just, I won't say before it was pretty much well before the deadline. I think he ended up playing something like close to 30 games for them. I'd have to check that, but in hopes of improving that goal scoring need that they desperately were looking for. However, Horvat at Vancouver was putting up goals left, right, and centre. That goal production did reduce significantly on his arrival with New York Islanders. So didn't quite get what they wanted, but still got a fantastic player in Bo Horvat, locked him up long term. So all in all, it wasn't a terrible season from the Islanders. They did struggle quite a lot, but we did still see a lot of that identity that they built over the years and that defensive structure. Sorokin was an absolute beast again in net. They just didn't have that goal scoring, and ultimately that's what cost them finishing higher in the standings and probably cost them making it further through the playoffs. But that's it for the recap. And now I'm going to hand you off to Jaden to take you through the 23-24 team lineups for the New York Islanders.
Alrighty, let's get started. So salary cap, still slightly over the salary, just under 500,000 over the salary cap. So still moves to be made here. Got at the start Anders Lee, Bo Horvat, and Barzell on the first line. Engvall, Nelson, and Palmieri on the second. So decent top six. You could argue that Engvall and Palmieri are probably third liners though. Fasching, Peugeot, and Wallstrom on the third. Martin, Cizikas, and Clutterbuck on the fourth. Defenders, you got Pellick, Pullock, similar names there. Romanov, Dobson, Aho, the worst one, and Mayfield. So that's the defensive core there, very solid. Goalies, best goalie contract in the league in Sorokin at $4 million. Obviously, he signed that 8-year extension at 8.25. And then you got Varlamov as the backup. Scratches, Holmstrom, Johnston, Bolduc, Gauthier, who they brought in for a couple years via free agency. Good addition, big man. And then Kuhlman as well. Notable losses, not many here. You got Josh Bailey traded away, and then Wotherspoon goes to Boston. So no huge notable losses there. Not compared to the bigger list that we've seen. And not many draft picks they've done. Obviously, no first rounds in the past 2 years. Odelius, Maggio, and Kufler, obviously on the ELCs in the 2022 draft. but it doesn't look like they've got too much coming through. I think their prospect pool is ranked around like 27th or so in the league. So not much depth coming through to replace this aging team.
And they
And
traded out probably one of their more prominent prospects in the Bo Horvat trade. So Atu Ratti, who probably would have been their most likely to step up, is obviously no longer with them.
So yeah, they're not worried about youngsters coming up. They're kind of going for it now. I think the average age of their forward line is around 30. Their defense is about 26. And Sorokin's 27 and Varlamov's like 35 or something like that. So pretty aging team here. Obviously the decor being the youngest. It's like where do you start? Obviously they got the Rick DiPietro dead cap. It's not really dead cap, but they are paying him $1.5 million for like 7 more years. That doesn't go on the
For
cap
a
yet.
long time.
Yeah, doesn't go on the cap yet, but it still comes out of the bank. I just thought that I thought I'd note that because that is still a very long time to pay someone. So he's making bank. And yeah, I guess I'll pass it to you. There's not too much more to say on this team besides they probably need the top 6 depth there. But yeah, I guess I'll pass it to you.
I was going to say you're just like, I don't know we don't know where to go with this
Handball.
team. It's a hard one.
Handball.
Yeah, but you're right. Like it is this really tough one. Like you saw last season, their defensive structure's still there. They've got a fantastic goal tandem, right? Like Sorokin's one of the best goaltenders in the league, and then you've got Varlamov, who is a real serviceable backup. So there's not really much wrong with their defense. Even their forwards play a really quite a good defensive game. However, they cannot put the puck in the back of the net. And that is the biggest issue. You look at Bo Horvat, as I said, they brought him in last season. He played the 30 games for them. And the big reason they bring him in is for that goal scoring prowess. And he had 31 goals in 49 games when they brought him in. So that looks fantastic. And you're thinking, brilliant. We've got him for a good 30 games here. So he's surely going to put up at least another 20 goals, right? But it's a big difference between a Vancouver who have no defensive bone in their body and just play a full firepower and hope that they can put in as many goals as possible, and they'll, their goals in will beat out the goals they leak through. Whereas he's come to a New York Islanders team who is a really defensively minded. Like they're built from the back. Like their idea is that we'll keep oppositions to 2 goals or less, and that just means we only need to score 3 and we'll win. However, so his goals were naturally going to dry up, right? And they did. He scored 7 goals in those 30 games. So he's gone from on pace for a 50-goal season to on pace for a not even 20-goal season with the Islanders. So it's a concern because he was meant to be, like, don't get me wrong, again, it's something that, we spoke about in previous videos about some players who have been traded and have needed that time to gain that chemistry. It could just be something like that, right? Or that only had 30 games. He hasn't, you're thrown into a brand new team. It's a defensive structure, so it's a new style that you're not quite used to. So we might see him bounce back. We might see him have a 30-plus goal season this season, and he could be the piece that the Islanders need and provide that much needed goal scoring that they require to make the playoffs and again, but also to go further in the playoffs. But it's just
you do need
it's a wait and see with him.
It is interesting the Bo Horvat situation. You always knew that he was going to score less goals coming in to this team, but it is interesting that the conversation on Barzal and how his goal production is, and you consider what if he went to a Vancouver, is probably looking like a Matthews in the 60 goals. On the way that Horvat's production changed so much, so. I wouldn't say 60, but you're probably looking at 30 plus on a normal team for Basel. But because it's such a defensive system, it is hard for these players to do it. And I understand
Yeah.
why they did the defensive system. It's when they did it when they didn't really have a team, and that's what got them into the playoffs a few years ago. Is just the system
Mhm.
and the players playing to it. So I
What's what
understand it.
continues to get them there?
Yeah, and
Like
they
it's
barely
the
missed
reason they
it
made
this
it.
time. So I understand it,
Well, they
but
made
you
playoffs,
want
so
your
yeah.
first line to have that freedom to go a bit crazy, and I don't see it. They
Mm,
have that full freedom, and same with the second line. But I feel like your top six should have a little more freedom to play their skills, to play to their advantage.
mm.
It
Yeah,
just going through like I mentioned issues with the top six depth. I think Engvall and Palmieri are probably more towards the third line in regards to the
yeah.
second line. So I would like to see maybe a top six winger added there for your second line, just to push one of them down. Most likely Engvall. I've already mentioned that prospect pool, so nobody's really coming up to replace. And I've already mentioned the age. Oh, I just want to go through a couple stats because really highlight on why this team was struggling last year compared to other years where they did make the playoffs. Their power play was horrendous. It was horrendous all season. I think it was around 15% pretty much all season, and it ended up at like 15.9. So they were 30th in the league on the power play. That's not going to get it done. You need to get those that's at least average. So and that's probably basically that one stat there probably makes them not make the playoffs. Just that alone. They had a good PK, number ninth in the league. Uh, on the power play though, they were the worst in the league for goals at 31, and worst in the league for goal differential at 24 on the power play. So they conceded 7 shorthanded. So 7 shorthanded and only scoring 31. It's a pretty bad statistics there. And I'll
Mm,
just go through some 5-on-5. They were 6th worst in the league for generating penalty minutes, so they didn't go on the power play as often as they should have. 5-on-5, they were 4th worst for rebound shots against, and they were 5th worst in conceding high danger shots. So a lot of rebounds from the goaltending and a lot of high danger shots, and clearly you're going to get that when you're getting high danger shots as rebounds. So it's not really on Sorokin, it's on the defense there because they were number 2 worst in giveaways and number 4 worst in D zone giveaways. So this was similar to Calgary that we mentioned, just too many giveaways happening, especially in the D zone, and that's causing high danger shots. And obviously, you're going to cough up rebounds because of that, and the puck goes in the net. And that's basically the problem. They got good D, but I feel like that giveaway issue, plus basically no goal scoring either on 5-on-5 or power play, and I don't see the players they've added to do it because all they've brought in is Gauthier, who is a fourth line, a 6'4" guy, and yeah, like unless you change your system a little and let these people run amok, they're not really going to put too many goals up. I don't think.
they're just going to have the same issues, aren't they? Like you look at this team, and outside of Bo Horvat having like getting to Vancouver, like his Vancouver level goals, like he did last year, even the year before, where he scored 31 goals in the 70 odd games. Even that production from a Bo Horvat with Brock Nelson still doing what he did will help them. But the big question is can they? And again, Nelson has to put up. Nelson put up high 30s for the last 2 seasons. Can he do that again? Because they haven't made any additions to this. They've got no cap space. So, like you mentioned, getting a true second line winger because Engvall and Palmieri really aren't that. I think Anders Lee is more of a second line winger than a first line winger as well. But I think you make do. Like he will work
Yeah,
with Bo Horvat and Barzell, so it's not the worst. But I'd love to see a second line winger, but they've got no cap. They can't. Like
well, they got
they
to
they
make a
have
move
to trade
to
out.
free up cap. That's the
Well,
issue here, isn't
well,
it? Is they're
exactly.
not adding, they're
But
decreasing.
yeah, and yeah, it's very hard to see because their window is running out, and I don't see them having a potent enough forward structure or forward lines. I don't. like their first line, it looks good, but if I was to rate it as like where in the NHL do I rate this first line amongst other first lines, it's not mid to low. Like I think it would honestly be almost in the 20s. So it wouldn't be. We're not talking it'd be top 10. It's nowhere near the top 10. This first line, I would be saying it would be anywhere from 15 to 25th in the league. For as far as first lines go, I just don't, and that's okay. You can hide that when you've got a reasonable second line, reasonable third line and fourth line. Their second line is basically a third line besides Nelson. Their third line is okay, and their fourth line is all right. But that's so their bottom six depth is okay, but the rest of it is just not there. I just don't see that forward line having enough potency about it, and I just think that they're lacking that goal scoring that's going to get them to a cup. I know we've seen them in the past make Eastern Conference Finals, but again, they make the Eastern Conference Finals off the back of defense and good goaltending, but then get found out when they come up against the best of the best. So,
Yeah. I
and
think
they're only getting older.
I think it's one of, if not the first team that we've had a look at that it's not the issue with the bottom six depth, it's the top six depth in a sense. And look, you look at some of these contracts, like 8.5 mil, 6 mil, and 5 mil through the center, and then 2.5 mil. Like that's a lot of money for your centers. You've got
Albeit their centers are probably the best part about their
yeah,
forwards. But
but
yes,
I'm just saying there's a lot of money there, and that is why this team is cash stripped, because their D doesn't take too much beside maybe a third line Mayfield at 3.5 mil. That's probably your big egregious one in regards to that. It doesn't mean it's bad, but it just means you should be playing a lot more minutes. You got Barzell on 9, Lee on 7. Like they've got a couple cheap contracts in regards to the Fashing and Wallstrom, but it doesn't really do it. Like you need a couple more, and I don't see Holmstrom could play 40 games probably this season and step up. Same with Johnston. Gauthier could play another 40. So they do have cheap options if they do move someone like like a Clutterbuck or a Matt Martin, just to free up cap space, and they could step in. But yeah, like you said, the issues with the scoring. Like I'm a big fan of Engvall. I think he's alright. I just think the guy needs to put on muscle. 6'5", I think he is, or 6'6", and weighs the same as Bo Horvat, who's 6 foot. So he needs more muscle. Palmieri, obviously these people are older, so could decline and could get even worse. He did have a decent season, but he only played 55 games. And that's the thing, with age comes injury. We've seen it with Washington. So you're running that risk and that rolling the dice in regards to injuries with this team. And as we said earlier, you don't have the depth to come through and fill that hole when it does happen, because you don't have any prospects to do it. And it's only going to get worse. The window is going to stay open purely because of Sorokin, and you got the Barzell Horvats. So as long as you have that 3 core there, you can make work around it. But you got no draft picks coming in to fill these people that are aging, like the Andersley and the Palmieri. So it feels like their window is probably another 2 years, and then it drops off. And I don't know if they can do it in the 2 years. Sure, great defensive structure, but you look at the teams in the Metro. You got New Jersey and the Canes. They have such firepower and good defense, so it's hard to even see them beat those two, no matter what. So what you're looking at, absolute third best, most likely. At absolute
I mean
best,
that's
in my
at the
opinion.
best. Yeah, I don't even think they're above the Rangers, and I think you got CBJ, like Columbus Blue Jackets, who are coming.
I
Who
just
I
think their
think will have
system
a
works
much
better than
improved
some other
season.
teams. That's it, though.
Oh yeah,
Their system
but their
makes this
system's
team,
great.
but yeah,
Exactly. Like you put a superstar team with this system, and they probably win a cup. But yeah, I just my issue with it, like the 2 years that you've just given them, is that Sorokin deal kicks in next year, which is $4.2 million of the cap
Yeah.
eaten. So now they're already 486,000 above. So they've got to find something there. So something's got to give there. However, it might just be a Ross Johnston moved on. I don't know. I don't know what they'll do to get under that. But next year, that's $4.2 million they've got to find,
Yeah.
which means Matt Martin's off, Clutterbuck's off, so that's 3.2. Sure, but you've still got to re-sign players. So even at league minimum of 900 or something, or I'll go a 900 because you're not going to fill them with $700,000 contracts. 900, you save about 1.2 mil on those contracts. So you're still $3 million short, which means someone's got to get moved. It could be Peugeot, but who's taking him for 5 mil? So I don't know. Like, I just look at this team and I'm thinking this year is probably,
Well,
if
this
they
year is
don't do it
definitely
this
the
year,
big year because of
it's
Sorokin.
it's gonna be harder next year. And then I think they've only really got this year and next year before the likes of Nelson and Lee and Palmieri and all of that start to get too old. And then the Varlamov, word vomit, Varlamov. He's contracted to 2027, but he's an aging goaltender. I know he's only a backup, but how long is he going to stay as a good enough backup? So I really feel like this year is the best chance they've got, and it's not there. I'm sorry, Islanders fans. Like, I don't think it's there, and I
I
don't.
can't see it in like a
Yeah,
conference final or a cup final that this team wins it because I just don't think they have the firepower to get past a great defense. And I
no,
feel like that's the issue. They got the defense, they got the goalie. You just need that firepower, and unless you make a huge move, like I don't know, moving a Palmieri and Anders Lee, like whatever big contracts you can move and try and add. Yeah, sure, but honestly, it's not going to be upgrading too much if you did.
no,
And
and you're not getting much for them because
yeah,
Palmieri for $5 million. I don't know how many teams are going to be able to wear that contract.
yeah.
Like, to get rid of that, you're going to have to eat and retain salary.
Mm.
So
At least they don't
yeah,
have too many UFAs to worry about. So, Lamorello can make some moves. I know Lou likes his long-term contracts, hence the Engvall 7 years at $3 million. You don't generally see that type of contract, so it is like it's good to lock people up. He's getting a somewhat of a decent core, but I feel like he's just missing one or two pieces. You did touch on the goaltending situation with Varlamov and basically Sorokin. They this organization has no goalie depth. I've noticed. Obviously, the last 2 years they have not drafted a goalie, and they've only got three other goalies, I believe, in the prospect pool, and not too much to noteworthy to speak of those goalies. Appleby's been below average. I forget his name, starts with an S, but they
Garrett.
yeah. So
Yeah.
they're not really there. So if a Sorokin, especially, but if Sorokin or Varlamov go down at any point for any period of time, I can't see this team doing good, and I think it will struggle. So it is really heavily relying on Sorokin and Varlamov to stay healthy. And if God forbid Sorokin does get injured for half the season or something, I feel like you could almost throw this team's playoff dreams in the bin if that does happen.
Mhm.
So
And it's
yeah.
already going to be hard for them, to be honest, man, because we may be in a season this season where you need to be top three to make it from the Metro,
Yeah.
because that Atlantic division, albeit Boston are probably going to come down a little bit, Toronto might drop a little bit more. Who knows with Florida, but he's still got some really potent sides in that. And then you've got Ottawa, Detroit, and Buffalo all ready to take that next step. So, we've said it before, there's probably 7 teams in that Atlantic.
Hmm.
I just,
I,
I
I,
don't
th-
know.
I
Like
think you still see a 4-4 because so much
you
competition.
could.
They're going to eat points off
Metro is
each other.
strong.
They're going to eat points off
Yeah,
each other.
Metro is
Whereas,
strong though.
yeah,
Yeah,
but I feel like a couple
it's
of the teams are a little bit weaker. With Columbus, sure they're
mm,
getting better, but and then you got Philly, who's complete rebuild. So,
gone.
um,
Washington
pretty much
not gonna
gone.
really be there.
Penguins trying, but it could go either way. So, like obviously the Atlantic looks so far on paper the stronger one, but I still probably see a 4-4, and that's just purely because I feel like the Atlantic will feed off each other, and that's
Mm,
probably why you're not probably going to get that big gap. Other than that, I don't know what moves that Lou makes to make adjustments to this team, because there are just some contracts
yeah,
that are pretty hard, if not impossible, to really move while making your team better for a cup. And
yeah.
unless you, I don't know, if you change the system, like even though I like the system, like that's basically one of the only ways I can see it. But if you if you change that, I feel like it might expose all the weaknesses of the team as well. So yeah, interesting times for New York Islanders, but definitely the window is closing, and then it's going to
Hmm.
be a hard rebuild because they have gotten rid of a lot of their picks over the last few years.
Yep. Yeah, look, it's not going to be pretty for the Islanders once they come out of it. I think Bo Horvat and Matt Barzell are going to be hugely wasted because I think you might get a good 2 to 3 years out of their contracts, but those last 5 years of both of their contracts are going to be with
Yeah,
the
I,
Islanders
I
in a
could see him
rebuild.
requesting a trade at some point if it goes down
Well,
the gutter like it could.
I'm,
Um,
I
you
mean, I
don't want to
don't think
see
the
it, but
Islanders
yeah.
would be against that either, right? Because if you're going into a rebuild, do you really want a Matt Barzell and a Bo Horvat on your side?
Oh, exactly. But
Like,
that's the
they're
thing.
not going
Like,
to be needed.
2-3 years, you could be looking at it and going, "Oh, Barzell's not there, Horvat's not there," and then what happened to this team? And
Mhm.
yeah, then you got
And
some.
you've had no draft picks either.
Yeah,
Like, yeah,
and
you
that
haven't
is the
had draft
biggest
picks.
detriment of this team, is that they're going for it, but they're really gone for it, and they don't really have the team that's there for it. But their prospect pools are like top five worst in the league. So
Mhm.
that is a big issue. They don't have the goalie depth. So if anything happens to Sorokin, um, yeah, basically GG for the organization. And honestly, it's probably your biggest trade bait if you ever do a rebuild, is Sorokin. But yeah,
Mhm.
I don't have much more to say on them. I think they are that wild card spot. I think they're playing for that wild card spot, depending how, basically racing against the Penguins, I'd say, for it. And yeah, I don't know if they have it to edge over the Penguins, though I believe in their system more than the Penguins.
Mm. Yeah, look, I think they'll compete. I think they'll compete for a wild card spot, but again, like they might get there, they might not. I mean, look, we might be talking a whole different ball game 40 games into the
Yeah.
season if the likes of Horvat and the goal scoring, like Palmieri is back to his goal scoring best or something like that. That could fix a lot of their issues. Um, However, or Matt Barzell might actually finally score 20 goals for the first time since his first season. Um, no hate, he's a brilliant player, but he's not put up 20
Well,
goals
now he's
since
got a
his first season.
good line mate in Horvat, so it
Um,
could happen.
right. So that could be what's needed. But I just, yeah, I feel like it's gonna be much of the muchness. It's gonna be the same thing as last season. They're gonna do well defensively, be in games because of that, but they're gonna struggle to score, and ultimately they're going to be in a fight for the wild card spot. They might make it, they might not, but at the end of the day, even if they do, don't think they'll go far in the playoffs if they make it, unless something changes in terms of their goal scoring
Hmm.
and their forwards.
Alrighty. I guess we'll leave it there for the New York Islanders. So don't forget to like the video, comment below on what you think of them, if they make the playoffs or not, if only 3 teams from the Metro make the playoffs, and what you think of the Barzell, Horvat, and Sorokin situation if they end up leaving. But yeah, and don't forget to subscribe and leave all notifications on for more content. But till next time, we'll catch you later, guys.
See you guys.